respiratory structures. What do we call this big brown thing right here?
Pharynx.
Larynx. What was the hole that's left? Pharynx. Okay, the pharynx is the hole. The larynx is the big brown structure here. Then what do we call this thing going down from the larynx? Trachea. Okay, very good. And then off to the side we have some vessels here. Now in my Mink you don't see the vein, but we see a nice artery here. What do we call this artery that stands here?
Jugular.
Common carotid artery. Is this left or right common carotid?
Left.
Left common
I don't
carotid.
believe
What's the nerve that accompanies it here?
Vagus.
Okay, it's the vagus nerve, and if we have the vein, what will the vein be? That's here, but you just can't see it. That's the internal. So it's the common carotid, the internal jugular vein, just so we know here. Okay. Well, besides those structures, we also can try to see some more things involved with digestion now, and we'll start way up here with these salivary glands. So in minks, these are the largest salivary glands the mink will have. You have one on this side and kind of part of one on the other side here. Okay. This is that's in human. This is the mink's submandibular gland. Okay, just so we know, again, a little different. So this big gland I told you before not to cut off is the submandibular gland, where the mink's parotid gland be kind of right in here, and sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. My mink has a little bit left, but the parotid gland's pretty tiny on the mink, not very big, but it'll be found just in front of where the mink's ear is, where the auditory meatus is, all right? But the one we all should see right here is the submandibular gland. That's a very large gland. That's the biggest gland that the minks will have. Then we said this hole here was our pharynx. We said a common passageway for not just for air, but also for food and liquids. Behind the trachea, we have this brown muscular tube. What do we call this thing? Esophagus. And to prove that it is a tube, you can just stick the probe right down inside, and again, all the way down there like that. You swallow the thing, he's not like a sword swallower, he's a probe swallower. Okay? So that brown tube is the mink's esophagus, going all the way down eventually to the stomach. We'll see. So going from here all the way down to there. It's a pretty long esophagus. Now we're going to look down in the mink's thoracic region. And again, for a little review here first, what do we call this organ right here, this brown thing?
Thymus.
Thymus, like we talked about today in lecture. So that's the thymus. Pull it out of the way. What do we call this thing?
The heart.
The heart. All right, let's get the basics down first. So with the heart, we see some of our chambers here. We had towards the backside, like a little right in here. This was the right atrium. The big ear hanging off here was the right auricle. Just down below that, this was the right ventricle. Remember the big groove you see here divides the right ventricle from the left ventricle. On the back side, we said the messy area right in here is the left atrium. And this little ear hanging off the left atrium is the left auricle. Okay? Well, it's the real thing. It's by the way, this heart is also legit, just so you know. Okay? So, what are some of the big blood vessels we also see here? Remember, we had our stoplight. 1, 2, we'll do it in order here. So 1, 2, and 3. The one on top here, not really nice. This means superior vena cava. Showing up very nicely here and also quite large. This is the aorta, namely the ascending aorta. The big blue thing right here was the pulmonary trunk. Okay. On the bottom side here, this was the mink's inferior vena cava. And these little holes you see, like one hole here, another hole on the other side going to the left atrium, those would be pulmonary veins, and we see at least 2 of those anyway. So that's our basic heart anatomy with the mink heart here, and again, a good-sized heart to work on. So once the heart's out of the way, we also have the lungs here. In the mink's right lung, remember you had 2 lobes, the left lung had 2 lobes, so we had a superior lobe, inferior lobe. The mink's right lung had how many lobes? 4. Okay, humans had 3, the minks had 4. So we have superior, middle, way down here, inferior, and the 4th one that humans don't have called the cardiac lobe. Okay? Right here, that's the cardiac lobe. What was this muscle right here called? Diaphragm. Now you see the rest of the trachea. It'll branch into the bronchi. We have a left bronchus and a right bronchus. Okay? The last thing, I was really proud of Arby for having these good vessels, these nice big arteries. Look at the arteries I dug out of this guy. So coming off the mink's aortic arch right here, there's the aortic arch coming up. We see the 2 big arteries. On the mink's left-hand side, this is the left subclavian artery. On the right-hand side, this is brachiocephalic trunk. And they're very big. This is about as big as you'll see these arteries on the mink. And they come up here now. Again, here is my mink's not too nice superior vena cava, kind of flopped out of the way. Now we see our bird foot. We have 1, 2, 3 arteries, also showing really nice here on RB. So 1, 2, 3 arteries. First one here, this is the left common carotid. The next we have the right common carotid. The one going out to the arm here is the right subclavian. Once this artery crosses the rib cage and gets into the mink's underarm, what do we call it right in here?
Axillary.
Right axillary. Once it enters the mink's arm,
Brachial.
brachial, exactly. So subclavian to axillary to brachial, all on the right-hand side here. So that's one thing that this mink shows very well, these nice big arteries here to look at. Okay?
What's coming off the bird foot again?
So the bird foot has 3 branches, kind of like this. That's the way it branches. So we have 1, 2, 3 branches. You know, when I call it the bird foot, sometimes it really does look like that, like on their mink, you know, your mink and stuff, it does look like. Other times you see more, they don't quite come off as symmetrically, but still. The first branch coming off here, left common carotid. The second one is the right common carotid. Last one, right subclavian artery.
And then that's left subclavian over
Yeah,
here?
over here is left subclavian, correct. Something else on my mink I did just because I had some time messing around here. Look when I move the lungs though, you can look how the aorta loops and goes down there. Isn't that cool? So you can see the whole descending thoracic aorta. So basically, when you try that on your mink, you just pull the left lungs a little bit over medially. Then there's a very thin sheet of fascia. You just can very carefully kind of just pull that off, and you can see the whole vessel exposed there. It shows you it's a pretty big
What
artery.
vessel is that?
That's the aorta.
Oh,
So going down, that's the descending or the thoracic aorta, going all the way down to the mink's thoracic cavity. Well, just like that in our body as well. Okay, so that's our review so far. Now we have new stuff for today. We're going to cut down into the mink's abdominal cavity and get a look at all